Billions of dollars are being frozen, which hurts federal agencies. It impacts hiring, the ability to operate. Plus, despite the federal hiring freeze, we got some sneaky hiring taking place. And we're going to talk a little bit more about the DRP, the Deferred Resignation Program. Let's get into it. The White House is ordering a freeze on over $30 billion in spending across multiple federal agencies. This is different than the NPR and Big Bird story that we were talking about earlier. This one impacts the National Science Foundation, the Environmental Protection Agency, NASA, and even the national parks. And it's really a question of who controls this country's purse strings. Is it Congress or the president? The federal budget for this year is roughly $6.8 trillion. This freeze targets about 0.5% of that, which seems tiny at first, but it's massive for the programs getting the axe. And this is tens of millions of dollars that were supposed to go to national parks to keep them operating. You want to go to the park, right? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. Some people want to go. That's not going to be happening. Same thing with NASA research. That's off the table as well. So the scientists that were employed to do the research, their jobs are in jeopardy. The U.S. Constitution, Article 1, Section 9 says Congress holds the power of the purse. Lawmakers get to decide how much money is spent and where. But Russ Vought, he's got his own idea. This man right here, he's using a strategy called spending deferrals. And essentially they're telling Congress they don't want to use this money. Even though the money's been approved and allocated for that agency, they don't want to use that money anymore. Congress has 45 days, not business days, calendar days, 45 days to approve it or not. And if Congress is too busy and they don't take action, well, that money is automatically pulled from that federal agency. There was another president who took issue with spending money that was already approved through Congress, and that president was called Ronald Reagan. And because Ronald Reagan wasn't spending the money that he was supposed to, they created the Impound Control Act. This law was created in the 1970s exactly for this type of situation. Under this law, presidents can't simply refuse to spend money. Congress must approve rescissions, and deferrals are temporary. This means that presidents cannot just sit on that money indefinitely. They cannot ignore Congress because of their political agenda. Critics like Joseph, a former OMB official, said, this is consistent with an administration that believes they have broader powers around budget and spending than any other administration has ever been able to find. Here's an example. Imagine your Congress and you approved $1,000 to fix a local bridge. But the president says, I don't like bridges. They're horrible. They're a disgrace. I don't like anything about bridges. So instead of just asking to cancel the money, what they're doing is freezing the money and then asking to cancel. And if Congress is too busy in 45 days, the money's gone. Of course, the White House has already pulled back over $9 billion from NPR, PBS, and foreign aid. Now they're eyeing a different strategy, something called a pocket rescission. A pocket rescission, essentially, they're going to wait for the end of the fiscal year. And if the money isn't spent by the end of the fiscal year, they're just take it away. The way that this would work is Congress approves the funding, the executive branch delays the spending, the money expires at the end of the fiscal year, and it's automatically canceled. So in that process, Congress isn't involved. They never got their 45 days. It was just automatically canceled. Now, why would you do this if you were the president? Well, you would do this because you might believe that the system is too slow, for one. But number two is more likely that you don't have congressional approval. They're not going to approve what you're trying to do. What other reason is there to do it? One of the masterminds behind this is Russ Vought, the OMB director and self-proclaimed budget hawk. This guy has been railing against Congress's authority when it comes to spending and allocating money for years. He doesn't like it. He feels like the president should have the authority whether or not to spend or not spend, even though that authority inherently belongs to Congress. He wants to take the Impoundment Control Act to the Supreme Court so that they can get rid of it. And it all goes back to this concept called Unitary executive theory. If you haven't heard of this, don't worry because you're not alone. Millions of Americans have never heard of it, but it's really popular in conservative circles and it's all about increasing the power of the president. So you know the three branches of government, right? You have the executive branch, you have the judicial branch, and then you have Congress. So this is about giving more and more power to the president. This means he could dismantle independent agencies, refuse to spend funds, terminate enforcement of laws, and withhold information from Congress, among many other things. Now, on the other side of this coin, there are some reasons why you should pay attention to agencies' budgets. And if the money is just piling up there, you should divert it to other areas. An OMB spokesman said, "We're constantly checking in with agencies to assess their unobligated balances." In other words, they're hunting for money that's just sitting there. If the agency isn't spending, then it should go to a different location. Now, should it go to further a political agenda? That's a whole other question. But across all agencies, at times, they find billions of dollars that are sitting there. So there could be a good reason to do a rescission. I don't think anybody wants their tax dollars to be wasted. Now, let's take a look at DOGE. DOGE is doing something really interesting over there. What they're doing is actively recruiting. They're actively recruiting federal employees, and they're not doing it with usajobs.gov because that's the traditional way of doing things, and DOGE is not traditional. So what they're doing is they're using data that you probably already submitted on usajobs.gov. If you click the little button that says make my resume searchable, they're probably using that. If you click the button that says I want to share my application and resume with other agencies, they're probably using that. So they're actively looking and sending emails to people that could be interested in joining DOGE. DOGE right now, the intent is to make it an 150 employee organization. They want to grow it. They're asking for millions of dollars to continue to fund it. One employee said, in March, they almost fired me. In May, they forced me to retire. And in June, they're trying to hire me again. That sounds about right. That checks out for how things are looking in 2025. And right now, DOGE is really looking for IT people, and they're looking for legal counsel, which is interesting because we're in a federal hiring freeze. What are you thinking, DOGE? This doesn't fall into the category of national security, public safety, or immigration, does it? No, not really, but still, they're going to keep on hiring. I still believe that there's a lot of resentment when it comes to DOGE. When it comes to the mission, I think everyone's on board. If you're trying to reduce fraud, waste, and abuse, that's why we have the Office of Inspector General. That's why there's the Government Accountability Office. We want to root out fraud, waste, and abuse. But in the way, in the style, and the method that DOGE has chose to do it in secret for the most part, a lot of people can't get behind that. A lot of people, they don't want to join a team that's responsible for making these chaotic cuts. Now, maybe you're different. But if you're interested, don't contact them. They're going to contact you. Now, here's another thing. There are DRPs happening all across the federal government, and people are looking at that as a form of severance. It's really tricky with the wording because some people come out of the woodworks and they're so upset. They're like, don't call it a buyout. Don't call it a severance because it's not that. It's administrative leave for a certain amount of time. Call it whatever you want to call it. But if you paid attention in the news right now, you have Google offering severance. They're doing 14 weeks over at Google, right? So if you compare this to the DRP, I think it's worthwhile just comparing to see what the private sector looks like compared to the public sector. If you were to take the deferred resignation program in March, there's a lot of people who did it, tens of thousands of people who did it in March. If you were to do it in March, that's 28 weeks. Compared to Google, Google's doing 14 weeks plus 1 week for every year you work there. So let's say you did 10 years at Google, that would be 24 weeks. So this is kind of comparative, I think. But of course, there are some big differences. If you look at Google, the reason they're doing these buyouts is to pivot to AI and to boost profits. But why is DOGE recommending so many cuts all across the federal government? The answer to that, make the government smaller, more efficient. Maybe it's to push a political agenda. So many of the meetings have been happening in secret. So it's really hard to have a transparent answer. And, a lot of it could also be AI. I think everyone's looking to pivot to AI. I was at a train station recently, and there was this billboard that said, "Stop hiring people. Use AI," or something to that effect. I'm kind of paraphrasing, but essentially it was telling people, it was trying to target business owners and telling them, why are you hiring all these people? That's kind of disheartening to hear. If you're a person that wants to stay employable and you're looking for a job or looking for a better job, you don't want to see a sign like that. In addition to all of this, unfortunately, we as a country, we're wasting millions of dollars each and every month, tens of millions, hundreds of millions, and we didn't have to. It didn't have to happen, but we're still doing it. And we're doing it because we're paying people that want to keep their job. So it's one thing if you're trying to offer an incentive to have someone leave your agency, like a buyout, like severance, or whatever the case is. But it's something completely different when the person desperately wants to hold on to their job and you're telling them no, but you're still paying them each and every month. That's happening in the federal government right now. If you want to know more about that, check this video out next. Stay updated by signing up to the free newsletter down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.